Hello, Eastview family. Happy Wednesday to you. I pray that this series, Refocus, is blessing you, challenging you, and encouraging you as it is doing so for me. This week we are in Ephesians 3. In verses 14 through 21, Paul has this beautiful prayer to the church in Ephesus, a prayer for their strength to comprehend the love of Christ, that they would be filled with the fullness of God. What a phrase. It would take a miracle to accomplish this, and yet this is our prayer. It is our prayer as followers of Christ. Yesterday, Jason talked about the immeasurable love of God, and today we are talking about this idea of the fullness of God. Let's take a look at Paul's prayer again in Ephesians 3, starting at the second half of verse 17, which says, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. So Paul's prayer is for our strength to comprehend Christ's immeasurable love so that we may be filled with the fullness of God. What does it mean to be filled with all the fullness of God? John Piper has a wonderful teaching on this scripture, and I'll put the link in the description in case you want to take a deeper dive into this. But what John Piper suggests is that to understand the fullness of God, it must be in terms of this immeasurable love. He says that when we have experientially sunk our roots into Christ and built our lives on Christ, and found the love of Christ to be all that it is in its breadth and length and height and depth, we are experiencing the fullness of God. So the bottomlessness of Christ's love is fullness. A love that overflows out of the abundant grace he has for us makes experiencing the fullness of God all that he is, his wisdom, his justice, his power, his mercy, his faithfulness, goodness, all that he is, we are able to experience if we understand the extent of his love for us. King David knew this. In Psalm 16, King David describes God as his refuge, his treasure, his Lord, his counselor, and he knew that his inheritance would be forever. He ends with, in verse 11, he says, "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy." God was his all in all. He was able to experience the fullness of God being intimately connected to him, having a personal relationship with him. Jesus reminds us of the importance of remaining connected to him in John 15. If you remember our study from a few months back, this is the passage where Jesus says, "I am the vine, you are the branches." And he says, "These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be full." So just as King David found his refuge and completeness in God, Christ invites us to find our refuge and completeness in him, remaining connected to him as branches to a vine. And in this union, we bear fruit and we experience God as our all in all. Understanding the fullness of God certainly will be an ongoing journey, a continual exploration of Christ's immense love. Though we may not fully grasp its vastness, we can grow in our experience of it. And may we press on in discovering more, growing more, and experiencing more of the incomprehensible love that leads to experiencing the fullness of God.